What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Yee Yee podcast. It is Wednesday, April 28th, and we have a Yee Yee NASCAR. Officially.
Yeah, I got something to say.
Uh-oh, here we go.
I got something to say to everybody complaining about the Yee Yee NASCAR being on a Toyota. To everybody saying that Toyota is city and un-American. Your argument is invalid. You know why? Because the Toyota's got Yee Yee on it.
It can't be city if it's got the Yee Yee logo on it. So to backtrack a second, if you have been off the face of the earth this last week, we officially announced, we've been working on this project for a while. We officially announced that there will be a Yee Yee NASCAR in the Xfinity Series race. That car is going to run on, what's the date? May 22nd at Circuit of the Americas in Austin. And then is it September 17th? September 17th at Bristol, Tennessee. So huge races. Circuit of the Americas in Austin has never had a NASCAR race. So this will be the first one ever. And then in September, if you know anything about NASCAR, maybe even if you don't know anything about NASCAR, you know that Bristol is a huge race. So we're super pumped. Brandon Jones is going to be driving the car. He's had several wins in the Xfinity Series. He's a legit racer. There is a very real possibility of Yee car taking the checkered flag in one or both of these races, in all seriousness. Yeah, I mean,
Both.
So we wouldn't want to partner with anyone that we don't think is going to have a chance. And not only that, Brandon is just like such a good dude. His team has just been amazing. Joe Gibbs Racing has been awesome. Ed from his team, from Brandon's team, has been amazing to work with. And Brandon himself has been fantastic. We had him out to the Yee farm for Yee Day, and he was a blast. So that happened this last week. We announced that. And yeah, so we've got him on the podcast today, and he sat down and we talked. I mean, we could have talked forever.
Yeah, I thought it went really well. You can just tell when you sit down with somebody and the conversation just flows. We could have done like 3 or 4 episodes with him. So I think we'll definitely have him back.
It's funny too, because he's used to doing all these different podcasts where it's like, tell me, or not podcasts. These athletes, they just get used to these questions where it's like, whenever we're on the corner and on lap 300, tell me what you felt whenever blah blah blah, and it's just the dumbest questions sometimes, I think, and I feel like athletes get tired of these. So what we try to do with this is let's ask him questions that he's literally never been asked before. And it was funny because we got done with the podcast, and as soon as we stopped filming, he goes, "Y'all asked me so many questions I've literally never heard before in my entire career."
Yeah, I thought we were just going to like throw up softballs to him that he's been asked all the time, but apparently our answer this like I'm a 5-year-old questions were not too bad. So I think they're going to enjoy it. We tried to ask questions that like, you know, drivers and people in the spotlight like that just get asked just these not political questions, but just like very staged questions that are like unauthentic.
It's like a checkbox.
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
Like,
and so we were like, let's like ask him what people actually want to know about a NASCAR driver. Like, how did you start? How did you become a NASCAR driver? What's it like driving to the grocery store after a race? Like, just stuff like that.
Well, and I think that whenever we ask these questions, we have to like represent also what Yee Nation wants to know, because of course we have all these fans in Yee Nation, and yeah, I know that a lot of y'all are diehard NASCAR fans and you've got your ear to the ground and you know everything that's happening, but 90% of everyone out there is just like either a casual fan or not really even a fan at all, and that's okay. Like, we're going to need y'all support getting behind Brandon for these races, and not only just for these 2 races, like for the rest of the season. Like, this is our guy. This is Yee Nation's guy. Him and Granger hit it off like crazy. He was great out here. So we need to get behind him and support him. And I tell you what, like, it is going to be the most fun in the world whenever this May race is coming up in a few weeks, and it's right down the road from us in Austin. It's 25 minutes away from the farm. So, I mean, we're going to need y'all's help to get all in on this and to root for Brandon and for his team and for hopefully a number 1 finish.
Yeah, catch me in a Toyota shirt. To everybody saying, of all the brands out there, all the boring, massive corporations that have been just around forever that everybody's so used to seeing, it's like there's like 6 of us in this building and we're on a NASCAR and people want to complain that it's a Toyota. It's like, bro, there's like 6 of us here in like Georgetown, Texas, and we're on a NASCAR. Stop complaining about the brand of the car. It's got Yee Yee on it.
And I think most people are like that. Most people that support us and what we're doing are just super hyped for us that we've got a NASCAR. But it's so funny to see the comments of the haters out there. And of course we'll have some. And wait until the actual car comes out. We'll have tons of haters once this thing is like legit sitting there, like a car is actually sitting there. So we're also going to have, can you update everyone on apparel and diecast that'll be coming out soon? Because I know we've been getting a lot of questions about that.
Yeah, I'm in the process right now of getting approved as a licensee for it's going to be a lot more red tape than I thought to get the Yee Yee racing collection going, but I'm working on it. I want to say a month, maybe sooner, that we'll have gear available. The diecast cars, we're going to have the little 164s ratios and then the 124 ratios, which is a little bit bigger, of the Yee Yee car and camo that y'all can get. And those are going to be available for pre-order, I believe. I don't have an exact I honestly don't know if that will be 2 weeks or if that will be a couple months at this point, but listen to the podcast and keep up with us on socials, and then we'll obviously let you know as soon as they're available, but those are going to be cool.
Yeah, so the Austin race is coming up, of course, but then we're going to really go all in for the Bristol race because it's Bristol, baby. So that's going to be the big one. So we'll kick it to the podcast interview that we did with Granger, myself, Brandon, and you were on it as well. So it was a really good time. So we hope y'all enjoy that, and we will see y'all next week. All right, we now welcome on Brandon Jones for a very special interview. If you aren't aware, Brandon Jones is an Xfinity racer for Joe Gibbs Racing, and we actually have some special news that just came out this week. Why don't you tell the listeners a little bit about it?
Yeah. Man, we are so excited to announce the apparel is going to be on the Supra for 2 races. Right, we've got Bristol, we've got Coda. So super pumped, man. I've been a fan of Granger's. I've been a fan of the Yee Yee brand for I feel like as long as it's been available to the public. So man, this couldn't be a cooler partnership for myself.
Same, man. Agreed.
Yeah.
Echo that. We're big fans of you, and when we found out when this was announced, we were like literally jumping up and down in here and hugging each other, and it's fair to say it's one of the biggest accomplishments, if that's even an accomplishment, that we've ever done with Yee Yee, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's really cool because there are a few personal goals for me whenever I came on to the Yee Yee apparel team, and one of them, and I wrote them down the very first day that I got this job, and one of them was to have a Yee Yee car. And we've had a few chances to have stickers on the Yee Yee car, and we've always said no. We've always said no because we want the Yee Yee car.
Whole thing.
Yeah, the whole thing. And not only that, we want someone that has a chance to be on Victory Road on Saturday night or Friday night in the Bristol case, and to have a really good shot. And so we couldn't feel more like we've got the right person with you. So it's super exciting.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I mean, you guys probably couldn't have picked 2 cooler racetracks to go to. One, Coda, there's so many unknowns, right? We've never been there with an Xfinity car. It's always been F1 stuff that's ever been there. So to put a stock car on that track is going to be interesting. That's something I didn't grow up doing, is road racing. I actually grew up at 13 years old, short track racing. I think that's, it's 2 different paths when you get in this sport. You can choose the road stuff or you can choose the oval stuff. And you can go asphalt, dirt. There's a lot of different, avenues to take. And there's not a school to learn how to drive, and so you have to kind of pick and choose what you're going to do. I actually, at one point, we knew some guys racing in the level that I'm at now in the Xfinity Series. And we knew him and said, hey, how in the heck do you even get started, doing this? Like, what is the path here? And he's basically said there is no real path, right? He's like, the only thing I can tell you is currently my dad, which was a short track legend at the time, is training this kid to try to become a NASCAR racer. That's what he was doing. He's like, so if you guys want to come, do a trial run, see what you think before you get totally invested in this deal, come on over and we'll kind of provide that for you. So I did that. Obviously, I fell in love with it, right? I mean, that was the coolest thing for me. I was a little kid there driving this truck around. It was at 13. And I can remember my very first race in that. It took about a year to get ready. We did every Wednesday after school, I would go just make laps all day. And his way of coaching was he was in a pickup truck with a headset on the entire time. He was just telling me, run this line. And then all of a sudden in a pickup truck, and I was out there in the race truck, he would get on my door, try to act like we were in race scenarios. So that's the way he basically taught us how to drive. And so I remember that very first race, man. They're like, all right, I think you're ready. There's probably only like 3 trucks in this last race to do. I would not touch that guy. We were lights out fast compared to him, but I would never touch him, never hit him. I was terrified. And pretty much the year after that, man, it was like a light switch went off. Started winning a ton of races. The very first year I ever raced for full time in that little series we were in, I was track champion at both tracks we did. Wow. So, I mean, you just get hooked right at that point. People are, now they're cheering for this little 13-year-old kid to win
13
races.
13 years old at this time.
Exactly, and so, man, I was hooked from that point on.
I was going to ask if there was like a certain moment where everyone was like, oh, wait, like Brandon's actually really good at this. It's not just like every little kid surely wants to grow up to be a NASCAR driver. But I was going to ask if there's a certain point where everyone was like, you have a natural talent, and I think that like you should start investing a lot of time into this.
So the people I think that understand the sport definitely said that. Truthfully, and it could be similar for the music industry as well, but it's tough to kind of come up through the sport because a lot of it's money driven, in my opinion. It definitely takes talent. You can't just get in one of these race cars and say, hey, I've got a ton of money, we're just going to go destroy it every week and it's all good. No, I mean, there's definitely a skill set to be able to maintain that ride for as long as possible. But there's a lot of people that have doubt too, for sure. I mean, you definitely have that period of time that you kind of have to push out the window a little bit, and I think that it takes some mental toughness to be able to do that. But once you break through that, you start kind of proving to yourself and others that you're capable of doing it.
It makes sense because there's kids that same age that are putting that investment into baseball or football, or there's a million things that 13-year-old kids do, and when you love it and truly love it, you're not just thinking about, man, I got to be a professional racer. The main reason, right, is because you just love racing. You get off of school and you're like, man, I just want to race.
Just want to go to a racetrack. That was what it was about, and I think that evolves into a career at some point. Kind of becomes a job. It's at some point in your life, it's still a blast. But I think your goals change for sure. I think your mindset changes. So yeah, at one point it was just about going and having fun. We just want to go win some races, and then we go live that normal kid life, have a good time. But now it's Monday to Sunday. For me, I mean, it's not only are we training for the race, but you got to get your body in the right condition if you want to be a champion one day. And the level that I'm at.
Dude, talk about that.
So
talk about that. I don't even know.
Well, that was one of my questions too. Is like, I mean, I've always heard that it's very hard. Like, you have to be in good shape. It's not like golf where you've got John Daly out there just walking around the course. And then also, like, is there an injury report in NASCAR? I've been wondering this since I started watching NASCAR. Like, how does that work?
Man, there's a lot of stuff like that. So it's interesting. When like you sign a contract to go to a race team, there's no like requirements to. You got to be at the gym every day. You have to eat healthy. This is what you have to do. I think that none of that is in that list, but it's almost like your duty to do that stuff to be the best.
You have a trainer?
I don't. There's people that do have trainers. With me being at Toyota actually has a pretty cool facility for people that maybe didn't work out in the past or didn't have somebody influencing them to work out. They do have a program that has stuff like that. There was a point where I was not working out and I was definitely not eating right. I was not doing any of that stuff. And like one day
you're looking for like energy, focus.
Right. It's not strength.
Right.
Our cars are, I say they're not very they're physically hard to drive. Road courses get a little physical, but for the most part, I mean, we've got the steering box is so fast where, I mean, you're turning the wheel that much the entire race.
Right.
But it's the mental toughness, I think, that it takes to get to the end of a race. We do have some cooling. We do have a little bit of that in the car, but I don't think it's much, and so you have to be mentally tough, I think, to get from the start of a race to the end of a race, in my opinion, and that just takes time and experience and mentors. That's one thing that I've had growing up in this sport is great mentors, and I think that's what takes you to that next step, too.
Yeah, so you've been in the sport, I mean, forever, right? Like, since as a little kid, you grew up on the racetrack, didn't you?
Yeah, for the most part. I mean, that was, once I started to basically say, okay, I want to let's do this. That was an investment for sure. I remember the very first NASCAR races. Actually, So there's feeders to get to this point. There's short track race, and then there's actually a level now that's kind of combined a little bit, but it was called the K&N Series, and like Kyle Larson, all your guys, all those dudes that are now Cup Series. I was racing with them at one time, Chase Elliott, all those guys. So to look where they're at now was like, oh man, I mean that's the avenue to get there. So that's kind of the path. That's kind of the stuff you think about and you have to commit to. But yeah, it's been a lifelong of trying to get ultimately to the Cup Series. That's what all of us want to do. We all want to get to the top.
Yeah, and how does that work? Like, when are you ready? Does a team have to sign you? Do you move up through the current team that you're on? If they have a spot, maybe if they don't have a spot, do they make one? Tell me about and also tell our listeners a little bit. Because there's 3 levels of NASCAR, there's the truck, and then there's the Xfinity, and there's the Cup. How does that work moving up through the ranks?
Yeah, Hayden and I were joking that we're like most of our listeners and a lot of people that are like country and live the outdoor lifestyle and are so familiar with NASCAR, but don't necessarily know the ins and outs and all.
That's just because we're from Texas.
And maybe that isn't. Maybe it's a
Maybe
Texas
because we're
thing.
Texas,
So we were like,
honestly.
we need Brandon to explain this to us like we're 10.
If we
Because
grew up in Georgia, it'd be way different. But we grew up in Texas.
Yeah. So, gosh, I hate to put it this way, but truthfully, one you're waiting on a seat to open. That's the biggest thing for the Cup Series. 2, it takes double the funds to get to an amazing ride in the Cup Series. So, I've always said where I'm at now in Xfinity, I think this is a great way to prepare yourself to get to that next level, but I don't think there's a set thing that you're going to do that's going to click and you're going to go to a Cup car and be just ready to win a race. I've seen so many people, and pretty much everybody that's in Cup has gone through Xfinity. They've gone through a year once they get to that Cup Series where it's miserable. I think.
So, Brandon, do you watch the Cup and think, great move, or do you think I got that guy? Do you think that?
Yeah, a little bit for sure.
I mean, you should. Obviously, you should because you're a competitor. You're a fierce competitor. I get that. I've seen you race, but I'm just wondering if it's like college. It's not like college and pro at all. Maybe it's like minor league pitcher looking at a major league pitcher, and there's not that much of a difference in between. Or do you look at it and go, yep, he deserves to be there?
So it's a good point. It's definitely the way I study. That's how I prepare to go to the race. But it's not off the Cup Series. It's all for the people that I'm racing with. So I go back, because we're going to Talladega coming up here. So I'll go back and watch Talladega, and I'll watch, things that the fans basically aren't looking for. It's things that, what is the best cars doing to get to the lead, get to the front of the race, and maintain the lead, because that's the goal of the race, right? You want to be the winner at the end of the thing. So typically in these races, history repeats itself. We look at so many different numbers, so many different things going into a weekend, but you start compiling all this data of, okay, every race has gone this way. They've had cautions flow. We make big charts on all that stuff, and Gibbs actually has people that specifically look at aerodynamic stuff for super speedways. So there's a guy all day long just figuring out how to manipulate the car and how to manipulate the air. I think that's where this sport's gone now. It's that competitive.
Yeah.
We're fighting for tenths of a second, thousandths of a second. It's so minute. And that's what I think is going to be the difference if I ever get to make it to that next step in Cup. And that's what I've talked to Cup drivers about, is those guys just don't mess up. They never slip. And so if you ever can catch those guys slipping up a little bit, then you take advantage of it, and that guy is always ready behind you to take advantage of you messing up. And I think when you watch, you see Kyle Busch or Denny Hamlin, those guys come down to Xfinity and they come down the truck level. That's why they dominate. They're just ready for you to mess up all day, and they're just used to that. So it's their normal deal.
Do you ever watch historic races? Is there a classic
way
race?
back?
Well, is there ever a classic moment in NASCAR history where drivers will watch this race at this moment because that was a classic move that was revolutionized in that race? Is there anything like that?
That's interesting. I've never physically sat down and tried to see that. I know when I go back and watch some of these races, they do highlight a long time ago iconic moves and big wrecks. I think that's what's highlighted the most, right? Those massive wrecks that we don't care to see.
The cars have changed so much, I have to guess,
right,
since Richard Petty in the 80s, it's a completely different car. Everything's different.
Man. the technology has gotten so advanced. Like, I mean, there's, Xfinity, I would say everyone's really good in Xfinity, but there is probably 12 extremely competitive cars that you would have to beat every week. If you're 12th, you're almost at behind of the best guys in that series. I have a feeling when you go to the Cup level, there's like 30 of those guys that like you're racing your guts out. Like, you can't figure it out. You're back there just swatting flies, trying to figure out like what in the world is going on. Like, why can't I propel up through the field? And I just think everyone's that close now.
Man, that's exactly how I feel on NASCAR Heat. I just recently got moved up from the Xfinity series, and the Cup is no joke.
What we got a contract signed too?
So I gotta get this off my chest before we get too deep into this. So on NASCAR Heat, that's the video game for everyone that doesn't know.
I'm on there, by the way.
Okay.
You got to pick the 19.
Well, hold on. I had a racer make it up to Xfinity. He gets up to Xfinity, and other drivers will compliment you or they'll say something mean to you. I have to get this off my chest. I complimented every single driver except for you. Whenever you came around, I would say something negative. So by the end of the year, I am cool with every driver on the game except you have a rival. You have a preset rival, and my rival is Brandon Jones. And at the end of the year, Brandon Jones wins Xfinity, and I get second.
No kidding, man.
And I was like, this son of a gun.
Yep.
I was mean to him all year,
Karma
and he ended up beating me.
Karma bit you again.
We had a big winter storm in Texas, and so everybody was snowed in, and so Hayden and I were just playing NASCAR Heat, and you were his bitter rival on there. So virtual Brandon Jones is our rival.
He's a wheel man on that thing, is what you're saying.
Well, and every time you came around me, of course, NASCAR Heat, I mean, if I get flipped around, I just run the opposite way of everybody, and I'm like, let's just smash everybody. It is not at all like the real racing. But man, I tell you what, I could not believe that I got to the end of the season. I was like, yep, that's how it works out. That's karma right there.
That's awesome. I mean, that's typically how it is in the real sport too,
True.
right? I mean, you got like a group of people that, and it's gonna happen, man. We run so close together. But there's always a group of people, you keep a tally mark up, like that guy got me earlier, this guy got me here. And like, you are thinking about that 100%. You get to some races, you're having an off day, you're like, all right, man, this is going to be the time to, I mean, we're savages in this sport. We really are. Like, you poke my eye, we're going to try to poke your eye back. I mean, that's just kind of how that is one thing I think from how the sport started. And I think that's definitely carried over. And I think that people, put in almost double the time now into the sport to try to make it. So whenever something goes wrong like that, you definitely have it out for somebody. So I try my hardest. I'm pretty level-headed when it comes to getting wrecked at times or getting into incidents because, in my opinion, that's what's going to get you to the championship Final Four, man. I mean, if you get there, if you're mad the whole season, you're going to start making bonehead moves, So that's always been my mentality. But it definitely is the typical, the guys that are getting into you are going to be the ones to beat.
Well, we were watching a video last night, and maybe Brian can put it on the YouTube clip of it was when you were the 4 car in the series before the truck series.
The ARCA series.
Yeah, the ARCA series, and you passed this guy on the very last lap, and you win, and then he comes up behind you after the race and like hits your car, and then you almost wreck. He almost wrecks you after the race.
He knows exactly which one you're talking about.
And then he pulls up right next to him, and they're driving side by side. I was like, and Hayden was like, I bet they're yelling at each other right now, or he's saying something.
It was a savage move too. Like not knowing a ton about NASCAR, but it's that last lap. Like anything goes.
I remember it clear as day. He left it like wide open.
Right, that's your fault.
Wide open. If you go back, and that's where you study these races, right? So you go back, if I was him, I would have went back and be like, man, next time definitely not leaving that bottom open because you see what happened. That guy slid in there and kind of just bumped you out of the way. I will never forget that in my mind for sure. That was my very first start ever in that series. We went out there. This place was lights out fast, man. Winchester, Indiana was the racetrack. The surface is incredibly old. It's like cup cars used to run there, like back in like Kenny Schrader and Earnhardt days and all that. And we had huge motors. They've actually gone out to like EFI motor, but we had a cup motor from like Hendrick or something in that car, and it made like 850 horsepower. So we were flying around that racetrack. I think I set the pole during that race. I was fastest in both practices and won the race. And so that guy was like, he was mad, right? Really mad. So we go the next weekend, and same state but different racetrack. It was in Indiana. Same thing. We show up with this thing. P1. I think I set the track record right off the bat in qualifying. first in practice and won the race, and he was so mad, dude. You could tell he was boiling over after that race. So yeah, that was highlights for sure. That was fun times.
So well, then we were also YouTubing. There's nothing comes up whenever you type in Brandon Jones fight, which is what our dumb NASCAR mind loves to do. I'm like, when did he fight?
Not yet. It's not on there yet.
No.
Well, all I'm saying is, wouldn't hate it if that happened in the Yee Yee suit. If you're ever gonna do it, might as well do it
Hey,
then.
man, we all should just jump in and we could stage something for sure if you really want to see something happen, man.
You just see country music singer Granger Smith
me and
and like a
Granger
couple
just-
little Yee minions running out there.
Oh, I'll be right there.
It's like, well, who are these guys? What are they doing? So another question that we were talking about, and I feel like this is one that you get probably all the time, but is it tough to drive a daily driver after being out on the race all the time? Like, I feel like that's such a basic
Days of
question, but
Thunder.
That's like the most NASCAR fan question.
no, it really is. Like, right? It's like
It's
what everybody's wondering.
Truthfully, it's not that bad. But I will say it is very awkward after a race, like because you've been going, for 3 hours at 185, so that's now became the normal feel. And I mean, I've caught myself multiple times, like just flying around corners, sloshing the luggage against the sides because it's like I got no sense of speed right now. Like 90 feels like pit road speed.
So the next most common question is, have you gotten pulled over, and did the cop know who you were and then let you go?
So I've only gotten pulled over, I think, like 3 times in my entire time of driving. You're calling it on me.
fact check that. We'll
We'll fact check. Something like that. It
Is
hasn't
there a
been.
reason you're driving so fast? Well, I am a NASCAR driver.
Yeah,
that's-
yeah. I think that would go. South.
You wouldn't, or would they be like, you're probably the only person that could actually know how to drive at this speed, so continue on.
It depends on the officer.
I'm gonna throw my truck driver under the bus here. So he loves to roll in that rig, right? Like that's his baby is that truck, and he flies in that thing. Well, I think he's gotten pulled over multiple times. And I keep a stack of hero cards in there. I'm like, hey, I'm going to sign these. That way you have get out of jail free cards, basically. He's like, man, you wouldn't believe how many times I've given out those cards and it works. He's like, so I need to keep a stack of hats with me after the race or something in case of that.
Yeah.
It's funny,
Our buses get pulled over, it's the same thing.
Yeah.
And they go, who you got back there? Because it's usually the middle of the night, 3 a.m.
Oh, yeah.
Who you got back there?
Yeah.
It's like none of your business.
Earl
I think-
Dibbles, and he always says Earl Dibbles Jr.
Earl Devils? Yeah.
Always. That's way better than saying Granger Smith.
Yeah.
That's so great. We've given hauler tours to cops, I think, before to get out.
That's cool.
Yeah. Like,
Yeah,
what you
well-
hauling back there? Why don't you come back and look? And then
Flaunt it if you got it.
take it easy, man. Yeah. It's perfect.
Another dumb NASCAR fan question, but I've been thinking this a lot is
You mean another question that's dumb?
yeah. Another dumb fan question
Some dumb NASCAR
is
person.
do you ever just like
Sorry, I'm just helping you.
do you ever just like black out? There's so many laps. Do you ever just kind of just forget where you're racing?
I've never been asked that, man. You're the first
Thank
dummy
you.
to ask that. No, I'm
No,
just kidding.
I actually was thinking the same thing. Do you ever daydream?
You get in a yeah.
300
You-
laps.
You
or
do.
whatever?
Like there is a period in at least every race because everything's very sensitive to the way you drive. So like I drive off markers a bunch. The track has a ton of like characteristics. Every track's got different ones. Typically they put cones up on the walls getting into the corner. You've got dots all across the racetrack. So you have to pick one of those out to be consistent. Like that's the way that you don't get passed basically is because you're running the same lap time over and over again. So you're constantly, like you get in the corner, you're looking at, okay, the 3 cones, my marker, that's where I'm going to lift at to get in the corner. So you're looking there, and then you're trying to find the apex of the corner, and you're doing that the entire race.
Yeah.
So yeah, there is times where you're going down and like, yeah, you got nothing. You're spaced out, and oh man, like we got to get back in the game here. And you're trying to think about how the car is, like what it's doing. Like that's the biggest thing too, and it's always changing. Like there's too many variables to keep it the same. So you're focused on the markers. You're trying to figure out what the heck I need to do to make the thing better so I can go faster. Like there is a million things running through your mind, so you get spaced.
Yeah,
And then
I could do the same thing on the stage. I could be in the middle of a really good show in a really good arena, and my mind could start thinking, man, I wonder what I'm going to see on Netflix tonight after the show. And then and it's like cruise control, no pun intended. And then I'm like, whoa, get back in it. So I could totally see it. That could happen in anything in life. I bet you could have Tom Brady could be thinking that in the huddle at some point.
It has to,
I'm
right?
hungry. I wonder what's for catering tonight.
Has to. Something, yeah. Someone has to have gone through that at some point.
Yeah.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure every driver has a spotter assigned to them in their ear, right? Talking to them from like up above at whatever track there is. Is your spotter talking to you? I guess you have the whole team technically talking to you, right? Or is it like chief, spotter, are the primary two?
Yeah, so like your two main guys, and actually the only people that typically speak on the radio is you nailed it. So you got your spotter, which like that's your main guy, man. That's your eyes, because you're locked in pretty much. I mean, our seats are incredible now. Like, they have came so far. They're all carbon fiber. You actually sit. It's so cool to do it and witness it one time, and then it gets old after the first one. But you sit in like a carbon bucket, and then they have a liquid that you sit in a big bag, like a big plastic bag, and they mix like 5 pieces of this thing up, and then when they pour it in there, it's like molten lava hot, and then starts forming around your body. So everything's custom fit to you in there, and your main focus, like, you can only see so much in front of you. And so, yeah, your spotter is very key, because he's telling you like when the line's moving, what the leader's doing, how many laps you're in, where the guys are, if they're, how tight they are. You can't see any of that stuff. We've got a little side mirror on the left side, and then we've got a rear view mirror, but that stuff shakes so incredibly hard that it's kind of difficult to use. So I rely on him a bunch. And then all the setup stuff gets run through the crew chief and strategy. Like, spotter does nothing for strategy. He just tells you basically what's going on, like where everybody is on the track. So when it comes down to, we're going to pit here, we're going to make this adjustment based off of what you're saying, that's all the crew chief. And then you kind of go down the line a little bit, but these are guys that typically just don't say much on the radio or anything. You got your car chief, which that's kind of the crew chief's right-hand guy, sort of, your mechanic right-hand guy. We've got an engineer on the team as well. You got a tire specialist, you got an interior specialist. So there's pretty much a guy that can handle each section of the car. When we had practice with COVID and everything, now we don't practice, we don't qualify, we just show up, we just race these things. But typically we were going through, two, yeah.
Right now, y'all are doing that?
Correct. Yeah, so we went
Oh
through
my
all last year
goodness.
that way, and
Because of COVID,
we're still in that.
How does that help with COVID?
Preaching to the choir, man. I don't know. Yeah. So there's none of that. You show up and race. It'd be like showing up for a concert, not sound check or anything. We're just gonna rip this thing right off the bat.
Yeah.
And,
Do you think
and
that
hopefully it's gonna be good.
You talked earlier about how there's a little bit of, there has to be a lot of financial backing early on to get involved in NASCAR, but it also takes a ton of skill. Do you think that because of what's going on right now, where there's not any of that practicing, and it's just racing, do you think that it's never been more important to be skilled than it is right now with how you guys are running?
Good question, because I was thinking year to year it has to change. The percentage of winning a race, driver skill, crew, and the car, right? Because everyone has the same track, everyone has the same road conditions, same weather. So those 3 things are like the 3 variables that I was wondering if 2021 that's changed. I don't even know what you would say. So say to win a race, you got to have a percentage of that pie. And what is that pie?
Ooh, man, it can't be much.
Your crew's
right?
not going to listen to this, so
yeah,
don't even worry about it.
It can't be much. You definitely never. In my opinion, I come to the weekend every weekend thinking I'm going to win the race. That's obvious. But yeah, the percent. I mean, there's one winner, and there's 40 cars, so there's 39 basically losers of the race. I don't think like that all the time. I think that a win is the main goal for sure. But I look at how the day kind of went. What happened throughout the race. And so if a top 5 comes out of a day where there was some hiccups and stuff, well, I'm like, well, it was a pretty solid day, right? We probably, if we could have cleaned that up, probably could have won the race. And so you have to look at that kind of stuff.
Watched you last weekend, by the way.
Yeah. So you probably know what's going on in my mind now.
We're talking about
Two-day top 5.
Well, it
got postponed.
I was leading after the postpone, and I only needed 30 more laps, and they would have called it and won the race. Yeah, that one hurt. So there's so many things. But so going back to basically what you're saying.
The pie. You got a pie, and you got 3 sections of the pie.
Right.
Driver, skill, crew, and car. what is it in 2021? You don't even have to speak for you, but just for all the drivers and all the series. What should it be? What's best to win a race? Like, is driver the more important thing? Is the car the more important thing?
Man, I'm gonna say the driver is the most important key aspect of it.
Okay.
Um,
So a good driver
I'm trying to
can
think
outweigh a lesser car.
yes, I think a good driver can take a really, really good driver. I'm talking the best that's out there can take like a car that would be from an average guy capable of running 15th, could probably get it to with inside the top 10 easily.
So what about the best car on the track with the 15th ranked driver?
Probably top 10 at best, but can't
Wow.
win.
Okay.
But can't win.
Okay.
But with the right brakes, could probably win. Like
Okay.
like let's say right like a ton like let's say like all your top guys that run up front every week, all of a sudden get in a big wreck. Well, there's your brake. You know, like you got
Gotcha.
it.
That kind of break.
Let's say yeah. Well, let's say this. Let's say like you got like the leader's got a flat tire and you're running third or whatever for whatever reason. You know, you looked into almost you're within closing distance of second. You know, you can maybe get to second, but there's no way I could have got to first. Well, that leader just got a flat tire and ended his day. So there's definitely stuff that can happen.
Where's the crew fit into all that? Is there? I hate to say this because of
tough.
people who listen to this, but crews might listen. I hate to even say it, but like, is there a crew on the track that's the best crew, and then there's the 15th ranked crew, or are they all just
Yeah, like
really
if
good?
there's like one spotter who's like the top spotter
Yeah.
that every driver wishes
Or are
they
they
could
just
have. Or
all,
So
something.
this
they're
is
all
a-
just all good?
This is good to talk about because it all has to gel, and I've seen this a lot. And you brought up a good point here. So I've seen like kind of, and this is more so growing up racing, but like you take a crew chief, like, man, that guy has won a lot of races, you're gonna win. Well, like, we didn't get along and we didn't win nothing. Like, we're 10th at best, can't even figure it out. I think it takes a combination.
Right.
I don't think that there's a certain crew chief that's gonna make you win all these races, and I don't think that there's a certain driver alone that can just go out and win a certain race. Like, I think it all has to kind of flow. And so when you see like a couple of guys winning a bunch of races, you kind of are like, ooh, man, that team is rolling right now. Like, the team itself is rolling. I don't think it's necessarily a driver or the crew. Like, I think once I win, then it's big confidence for myself, and then the guys that are working on the car, it's a confidence booster for them as well. So like the whole thing like feeds off each other. So that's why it's so
Yeah.
difficult
Yeah, I get it,
to
dude.
kind of
Makes
piece
sense.
it all together. Like, I feel like you could be the best guitarist out there, but if you have a terrible singer up there with you, then the band's not going to be great. So I don't know if that's a
Well,
great analogy or not, but
It is, because in that term, then what would happen is a great driver will always attract a little bit better crew, which will build a little bit better car,
exactly.
and it will always chase the talent of the driver at some level. Like a really good crew and not so good driver will eventually get a better driver.
Exactly.
So it's always going to go back to the driver. A bad car could have been a fluke. They're always going to build a better car.
Yep.
So the good driver is the one factor that has to remain every single week, every single race.
I would, yeah.
It reminds
100%.
me of like an NBA super team. We've seen it over like the last 15 years in sports, these super teams getting put together, and then sometimes it hasn't panned out, and it's like, well, you've got three guys that are used to only having the ball, and there's one ball. It's all about chemistry at the end.
It is, and trust. Like, trust is the number one thing, in my opinion. Like, if I were to get in the car
Yeah.
this weekend and be like, man, I'm not confident what that crew chief's doing
Yeah.
on the box, like, well, then you're already beat, in my opinion. And so like that chemistry and that trust. I've been with the same crew chief now for 3 years, and that's something that I've never had really. Like, I've always team hopped in a way because it's just difficult. It really is. I think when you're coming up through the ranks to hold on to a team, especially as long as I have.
Yeah.
And so I'm seeing the effects now of consistency and reps with the same person. It takes a while, I think, to figure out what your driver's telling you too. Like, for me, I use a number scale to describe how the car is. So it's like a 1 through 10, 10 being the worst, 1 being the absolute best. And so, if my number scale is a little bit different than his number scale, then it's going to take a while to get that kind of fine-tuned. And so now at this point, I feel like, I can tell him exactly what I'm feeling, and he knows, like, exactly, okay, this is what's going to fix that.
Dude, I just feel for you, man, because I just can't imagine with all those variables, you pull into the biggest race of your life, whatever that might be that week, and you get in the car and you're like, this is like an 8. Does that happen?
That's bad.
Does it happen?
An 8's like I'm probably in the fence. I'm
Okay.
probably in the wall. So like the worst number I would have in a race is probably a 6.
So you go to the best race, the most important race of your life, and you get in the car, you're so pumped, the weather's great, you feel good, and you're like, I'm in a 6 right now.
Well, I don't know if it's necessarily a 6 at the beginning, or are you
Right.
talking about like mid race?
I'm
You're like,
saying
I need to go
at
to.
some point that's
know,
your worst.
they-
Man, I'm like our stuff is good.
Yeah, I mean, your Joe Gibbs
At
racing.
Joe Gibbs,
yeah.
like we have,
It's always
I would
good.
say the hands down the best Xfinity cars. In my opinion, we got the best crew. We got the best of everything. That's how I show up thinking. We start out like 2 numbers every week, plus or minus that.
Yeah.
You know, so throughout the day, there's so many changes. There's weather, there's cloud coverage, there's the tires are getting hot, the track's taking rough. I can go on and on about things that
Yeah.
are constantly changing. So that's where your numbers continuously progress. You know, so I to give you a great example, like I typically will start at like let's just say like I'm tight, which means like the car is just not one to turn at all. Which it'll be 2 numbers, which that's kind of minor. Like I'm able to maintain a lead with this, but we need to work on it a little bit. Well, as you're running, it's like, ooh, now I'm 4 numbers tight all of a sudden. Oh gosh, I made the tires mad. I'm 6 numbers all of a sudden. So it's kind of my job and his job at the same time to figure out why it's going that way. Like, are you overdriving the car, or is this actually the way the track's trending? You know, is this something we need to keep up with? So I actually feel for him because
Yeah.
there is too much for him
Yeah.
to think about. I mean, I just got to tell him what's happening and try to use my tools. There's not much, but there's some tools to definitely try to manipulate the car and make it better.
Yeah.
You talked a little bit about Joe Gibbs Racing, and I've wondered, what is the relationship? Because obviously you've got your team, your crew chief, your spotter, everything. That's your team. What is the relationship, and what does it look like on a daily basis with you and other drivers on Joe Gibbs Xfinity? Like,
Because the announcers love to say, "Oh, here comes his teammate," or "So and so are teammates," and it's like,
but at the end of the day, you want to win.
are they teammates? Like,
Right.
are they like looking out for each other, or they just so happen to be on Joe Gibbs?
And I think that everybody thinks of the shake and bake, like all the classic fans are like, oh yeah, that from because Talladega, or what's the movie?
Talladega Nights.
Yeah, Talladega Nights, made NASCAR huge on to the regular person, and I think that everyone thinks it's that way. But at the end of the day, like, you want to get a win,
It's an awkward sport in that sense, like showing up as competitors but teammates at the same time. I think the teammate aspect is sharing notes. It's sharing a little bit more information than you would with somebody else that's not on the team. But I don't, I do somewhat cut my guys a little bit of break, during the race, like, because you're going to get it back at some point in my mind. If hey, I'm gonna let this guy in really really early. If we're going for a win, absolutely not, dude. Like, I've seen a lot of even teammates wreck each other for wins. I mean, at the end of the day, sorry, this is what we're trying to do. I'm not trying to let my guy that guy win. We're trying to win the race. So when it comes down to that, we all know. I think we've all came to terms with, like, hey, when it comes down to the end of it, just know that it's bets are off. And so. But throughout the day, like, yeah, you'll definitely cut your guys some breaks every once in a while. I think you guys would get a kick out of too how much is like said, like, from the drivers to other drivers out, like, in car aspect, like people throwing stuff out the windows during the race, people giving you signs out the door, out the left side window. There's a lot of that stuff going on that you watch from a driver's perspective. That TV, there's no way it can highlight it.
It's so funny. I feel like I see it all the time. It actually happened a couple weeks ago. We won't say the name, but
Yeah.
someone gets wrecked, 30 laps in, and they get out of their car, and as everyone circles back on the caution, there's just the birds go up.
Oh, yeah.
Like, that happens all the time. And it's what's crazy to me about NASCAR is, say you go 0 for 4 in baseball. Like, you still got to get back out there in the field. Whereas you get in a wreck that's maybe not even your fault. Like, your day's done. You can be, I mean, you saw it early in the year. You had, I think, was it the first or second race? You were running great. I think
Yeah.
you won the pole, or not the pole, sorry.
It was a stage.
Yeah,
It was a
sorry.
stage.
You won
It
the
was
first
Daytona.
stage.
It was
Yeah,
the
Daytona.
first
Yeah, it was
race.
first race of the year.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden you're wrecked and the day's done. It's like, man, that's crazy how it can just change, and it's not even necessarily your fault.
Right. Yeah. I mean, especially Daytona, man. I mean, that is like one of those tracks that I first thought that it was like Talladega Nights or like a Days of Thunder deal. Like, you go out there and, man, you're just gonna shake and bake and pass these guys, slingshot engage. But like, the more I watch, it's the same guys every week that are up front leading the race. So, like, there's that pattern again that we were talking about, right? Like, you are finding the guys that every week do this and are good at it. I don't think it's a fluke that they're up front, so there's a ton to those types of races, Talladega and Daytona being the two, I think, main super speedways we go to. That's a totally different style of race, and teammates in that instance help a bunch. Like, I think a win for the group is all of us in a line come to the checker flag. Like, as a company, that's the goal of that weekend. Now for a driver, like, absolutely not. Like, I want to be the first one in the group. But if you can stay working together, that's always the team that wins the race. And it's hard to do. It's hard to stay committed to that. There's multiple times where you'll pull out a line, and it's like, okay, I'm going to protect the teammates here because I'm going to, lose the draft. And you guys start going backwards. But, like, it's so crazy that if you can stay mentally in the game, like, man, you just propel right back up there within no time. It's like a game of just, side by side, basically leapfrogging is what I call it. So that race is very mental in that sense.
Crazy. Well, I think that about wraps it up. I do have one last question. We're going to need some clickbait here. So is there any way that you can promise a finish of any sort for the Austin race coming up?
Yeah, man, of course. I mean, first. That's what we want.
All right. You heard it here.
You heard it first.
You heard it right here. Brendan Jones, first place in the first ever Austin NASCAR race.
And it would be my first road course win. So that would be the icing on the cake. That's all I want. I want a road course win.
Yeah, you said earlier that that road course isn't your forte, but you did really well at where was that earlier this year?
Was it Daytona? I think we just ran Daytona road course.
Oh, because it's the week.
It was the week after
that's
the
right,
big
that's
race.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, you had a top 5 finish there, didn't you?
Top 5. That was huge.
So that was just priming you for this one.
That's like nothing, man. Now we're loosened up. We're ready for a first now.
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much for being on. We cannot explain how hyped we are. NASCAR in Austin is going to be insane, and we can't wait to see you there.
It is, man. I'm looking forward to the opportunity, and like you said, hopefully we get this Supra in victory lane with you guys.
See you guys.